The Metro of Death, a haunting urban legend in the heart of a sprawling city. Beneath the bustling streets and towering skyscrapers, lies an abandoned subway system known only in whispers as the Metro of Death. What was once a vital artery of transportation has long since fallen into disrepair, its tunnels now silent except for the occasional echo of wind howling through rusted tracks. Few dare to speak of it, but those who do tell chilling tales of ghostly figures wandering the darkened platforms, disembodied voices calling out from empty carriages, and a sense that something unseen lingers just beyond the edge of perception. The legend begins with the construction of the metro itself, a project plagued by misfortune from the very start. Workers reported strange occurrences during excavation. Sudden collapses of tunnels without explanation, eerie shadows flickering along unfinished walls, and an overwhelming sense of dread that drove many to abandon their jobs altogether. Rumors spread that the land beneath the city had been cursed long before the first rails were laid, a place where ancient rituals once took place and where restless spirits refused to rest. Some believed the metro had disturbed something far older than civilization itself, awakening forces that should have remained buried. Then came the disaster that sealed the fate of the Metro of Death. In the early years of operation, a catastrophic train crash occurred deep within the tunnels. No survivors, no wreckage, only silence. Official reports claimed it was a mechanical failure, but inconsistencies in the records left many questioning the truth. Witnesses swore they saw the train vanish into the darkness, never reaching its next station, while others spoke of hearing distant screams echoing through the tunnels late at night. After the incident, the metro was slowly decommissioned, its entrances boarded up, its existence all but erased from public memory. Yet, despite its abandonment, the Metro of Death refuses to be forgotten. Over the decades, brave, or foolish, explorers have ventured into its depths, hoping to uncover the secrets hidden within. Most return shaken, speaking of unexplained phenomena, phantom footsteps following them through the tunnels, spectral passengers standing on deserted platforms, and the unsettling sensation of being watched. A few never return at all. Locals warn against disturbing what lies beneath, claiming that the metro is not merely haunted, but cursed. Those who enter may find themselves trapped in a nightmare that stretches beyond time and space, forever wandering the endless corridors of the Metro of Death. The construction of Doom. The origins of the Metro of Death trace back to the early 20th century when the city's rapid expansion demanded an efficient underground transit system. Construction began in 1913 under the ambitious leadership of industrialist Victor Langford, a man determined to leave his mark on history. However, from the moment the first shovels broke ground, signs of something deeply wrong began to emerge. The chosen site for the metro tunnels had long been regarded as cursed by the indigenous people who once inhabited the region. Local legends spoke of a sacred burial ground that had been desecrated centuries ago, unleashing a curse upon anyone who dared disturb the earth. Despite these warnings, Langford dismissed them as superstition, pushing forward with the project. Almost immediately, workers encountered inexplicable obstacles. Equipment would break down without reason, blueprints mysteriously vanished or were found altered overnight, and laborers reported feeling an unnatural chill in the air even during the height of summer. Many claimed to hear faint whispers echoing through the tunnels, though no one could explain their source. One particularly disturbing account involved a group of men working late into the night. As they hammered away at the stone walls, they suddenly heard a child's laughter bouncing off the damp surfaces. When they turned around, they found no one behind them, only the darkness stretching endlessly into the tunnel. The most harrowing event occurred just months into construction when a section of the tunnel collapsed without warning. 6 workers were buried alive, their bodies never recovered. The official report cited unstable soil conditions, but those present at the time insisted otherwise. They described a strange vibration in the earth moments before the collapse, followed by a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from deep below. Some workers refused to return after that incident, convinced that something ancient and malevolent lurked beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. Despite the growing unease, Langford pressed on, determined to complete the project. He hired new workers, many of whom were unaware of the rumors surrounding the site. Yet the disturbances continued. Tools would disappear, only to be found miles away. Workers would wake in the middle of the night to find their bunks soaked with icy water, though there had been no rain. And then there were the nightmares, vivid, horrifying visions of faceless figures dragging them into the darkness, of hands clawing at their ankles from the soil, urging them to stay buried forever. As the years passed, more tragedies struck. A foreman named Thomas Granger was found dead inside one of the nearly completed tunnels, his body contorted in a way that defied natural explanation. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror, and his mouth was stretched into a grotesque grin that shouldn't have been possible. The medical examiner ruled it a heart attack, but those who worked alongside Granger knew better. They claimed he had been muttering to himself in his final days, repeating the same phrase over and over. "It's watching us." By the time the metro finally opened to the public in 1925, the construction process had taken a heavy toll, not just in terms of lives lost, but in the collective psyche of those who had built it. Many of the surviving workers refused to step foot near the station again, and some even fled the city entirely, unwilling to risk encountering whatever force had haunted them during construction. The grand opening ceremony was held without fanfare, attended only by officials and a handful of curious citizens. Few noticed the uneasy expressions on the faces of the workers who stood silently in the background, their eyes darting toward the tunnels as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. From that day forward, the Metro of Death carried more than just passengers. It carried the weight of its own dark history. For nearly 2 decades, the Metro of Death operated without incident, ferrying thousands of commuters through its dimly lit tunnels. Though some passengers occasionally reported strange sensations, an odd chill in certain stations, the fleeting glimpse of a figure disappearing around a corner, or the distant sound of a train that never arrived, most dismissed these as tricks of the mind. The city's residents grew accustomed to the rhythmic hum of the trains, the scent of oil and dust clinging to the air, and the familiar glow of the platform lights. But on a cold November night in 1943, everything changed. It was an ordinary evening, much like any other. The last train of the night departed from Central Station at precisely 11:47 p.m., carrying approximately 50 passengers, office workers returning home, late-night revelers, and a handful of solitary travelers seeking refuge in the quiet solitude of the subway. The train consisted of 6 cars, each filled with weary souls eager to reach their destinations. As it rumbled through the tunnels, nothing seemed amiss. The conductor, Harold Finch, was a seasoned veteran who had operated the line for over 10 years. He radioed in at regular intervals, confirming that all systems were functioning normally. At 11:58 p.m., the train reached the outskirts of the city, passing through the Black Hollow Tunnel, a stretch known for its eerie stillness and the occasional malfunctioning of signal lights. Witnesses at the nearby West End station claimed to have seen the train pass through the junction without issue, its red tail lights fading into the darkness ahead. According to the schedule, it should have arrived at Ashbridge Station 5 minutes later. But it never did. At midnight, station attendants attempted to contact the train via radio, but received no response. Alarmed, they dispatched maintenance crews to investigate the route. What they found defied explanation. The tracks leading into Ashbridge Station were undamaged, yet the train was nowhere to be found. No wreckage, no debris, no sign of struggle, just an empty tunnel stretching into the void. The only clue was a faint, lingering scent of burning metal in the air, though no fire had been reported. Panic erupted. Authorities launched an immediate search, combing every inch of the underground network. Divers scoured flooded sections of the tunnels, rescue teams crawled through narrow maintenance shafts, and cadaver dogs sniffed desperately for any trace of human remains. But nothing surfaced. It was as if the train, and everyone aboard, had simply vanished into thin air. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed that the train had derailed into a forgotten maintenance tunnel, its passengers trapped in the darkness. Others whispered of supernatural interference, citing old stories about the cursed land upon which the metro had been built. A few even suggested that the train had somehow slipped into another dimension, lost forever in an unknown realm. Official reports attributed the disappearance to a mechanical failure, one that supposedly caused the train to plunge into an abandoned section of the underground infrastructure. But skeptics pointed out inconsistencies. If the train had derailed, why were there no signs of impact? If it had crashed, where were the bodies? And why did security footage from nearby stations show brief flashes of distorted images, figures standing motionless on the platforms, staring directly into the cameras, only to disappear seconds later? The investigation dragged on for months, yielding no conclusive answers. Eventually, authorities declared the case unsolvable, officially closing the inquiry with a vague statement that the train had likely suffered a catastrophic malfunction, resulting in the presumed deaths of all aboard. But no evidence supported this claim. No wreckage, no remains, only silence. Public outcry led to widespread fear, and soon, ridership plummeted. Commuters avoided the metro, opting instead for buses and taxis, unwilling to risk traveling through the same tunnels where so many had disappeared. By 1946, the city announced the gradual decommissioning of the entire system, citing structural deterioration and financial inefficiency. Within a decade, the once bustling stations lay abandoned, their doors sealed shut, their platforms overtaken by dust and decay. Yet, even in its abandonment, the Metro of Death refused to be forgotten. Despite the city's efforts to erase the Metro of Death from public consciousness, its allure proved irresistible to those drawn to the unknown. In the decades following its closure, a series of intrepid explorers, urban adventurers, paranormal investigators, and thrill-seekers ventured into the abandoned tunnels, hoping to uncover the truth behind the legend. What they found was anything but reassuring. One of the earliest recorded expeditions took place in 1968, led by a group of amateur ghost hunters armed with rudimentary equipment, and a fascination with the supernatural. Armed with flashlights and handheld tape recorders, they descended into the depths through a crumbling maintenance hatch near the old Ashbridge station. Their journey began uneventfully enough, their footsteps echoing through the hollow corridors as they navigated past rusted ticket booths and shattered glass windows. But as they reached the lower levels of the station, the temperature dropped dramatically. Despite the season being well into spring. One member of the group, a woman named Elaine Carter, claimed she felt an intense pressure on her chest, as if an unseen force was pressing down on her. She later recounted hearing a whisper in her ear, distinct and unmistakable, though none of her companions had spoken. The voice, she said, repeated the same phrase over and over. "You shouldn't be here." Terrified, she begged the group to turn back, but curiosity kept them moving forward. Their camera captured what appeared to be a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the platform, partially obscured by the flickering light of their flashbulbs. When they approached, the figure vanished without a trace. The footage, later analyzed by experts, showed no signs of tampering, leaving them with no logical explanation. The group fled the station soon after, swearing never to return. Another infamous expedition occurred in 1982, undertaken by a team of professional paranormal researchers equipped with infrared cameras and electromagnetic field detectors. Unlike previous explorers, they were determined to document their findings scientifically. Their journey took them deep into the Black Hollow Tunnel, the same stretch where the ill-fated train had vanished decades earlier. As they progressed, their EMF readings spiked unexpectedly, indicating the presence of an anomalous energy source. At the same time, the temperature in the tunnel plummeted to near freezing levels. Then, without warning, the lead investigator, Dr. Marcus Hale, collapsed. His companions rushed to his side, only to find him unconscious, his pulse weak but steady. As they attempted to revive him, they heard a sound that sent chills down their spines, a low, guttural growl reverberating through the tunnel walls, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Dr. Hale eventually regained consciousness, but he was unable to recall what had happened during his blackout. However, when reviewing the audio recordings later, the team discovered a segment of dialogue that none of them remembered recording. It was a voice, deep, rasping, and filled with malice, uttering a single sentence. "This place does not belong to you." Perhaps the most harrowing account comes from a lone explorer named Daniel Reyes, who documented his solo descent into the Metro of Death in 2003. Using a camcorder mounted to his helmet, he captured footage of his entire journey, which later became widely circulated online due to its eerie nature. Reyes began his exploration at the main entrance of Central Station, where graffiti-covered walls bore the remnants of past visitors. As he moved deeper into the station, he reported hearing faint footsteps behind him, though no one else was present. The sound grew louder as he proceeded, until it sounded as if someone, or something, was walking directly behind him. When he turned around abruptly, the corridor behind him was empty. Further in, he encountered what appeared to be a fully intact train resting on the tracks, its doors slightly ajar. Upon boarding, he found the interior eerily preserved, as if time had stood still. The seats were untouched, the floor free of dust, and the overhead lights flickered intermittently. As he explored he noticed something peculiar. The reflection in the window did not match his movements. Instead of mirroring his actions, the reflection seemed to move independently, mimicking gestures he had not yet made. Suddenly, the train's intercom crackled to life, broadcasting a distorted announcement in a language none could identify. Reyes, visibly shaken, fled the train and continued his exploration, only to encounter more anomalies. He described seeing translucent figures standing on the platform, their forms shifting like smoke before vanishing into the air. At one point, he claimed to hear a child laughing, though no children had ever been recorded among the missing passengers. His footage ended abruptly, mid-sentence, with a final image of Reyes turning toward the camera and gasping in horror before the screen went black. To this day, his fate remains unknown. These accounts, and countless others, serve as grim reminders that the Metro of Death is not merely a relic of the past. It is a place where reality bends, where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur, and where those who dare to enter may never return. Among the many unsettling phenomena reported by those who have dared to explore the Metro of Death, none are as haunting as the disembodied voices that seem to drift through the tunnels like whispers from another world. These eerie utterances, often caught on audio recordings or described by witnesses in hushed tones, range from indistinct murmurs to chilling messages that defy logic. Some believe these voices belong to the lost souls of those who perished in the Metro's tragic past, their words trapped in an endless loop, forever echoing through the abandoned corridors. Others suggest a more sinister explanation, that the voices are not merely echoes of the dead, but something far more malevolent, attempting to lure the living into the darkness. One of the most infamous cases involving phantom voices occurred during an expedition in 1995, led by investigative journalist Richard Ellery. Determined to uncover the truth behind the Metro's legend, Ellery and his crew set up high-quality audio equipment throughout the tunnels, hoping to capture evidence of paranormal activity. For hours, they wandered the empty corridors, documenting their surroundings in near silence. Then, just as they prepared to pack up and leave, the recording devices picked up something extraordinary. A slow, deliberate voice, clear and unwavering, began speaking in perfect English, though no one was present to deliver the message. "They are waiting," the voice intoned, its tone devoid of emotion. "They remember." The recording continued for several minutes, the voice repeating variations of the same phrase. "Turn back. You do not belong here." When played back, the audio baffled experts. There was no indication of tampering, and the acoustics of the tunnel made it impossible for the voice to have originated from any external source. Ellery, unnerved by the experience, refused to speak of it publicly for years afterward. Similar encounters have been reported by countless others who have entered the Metro. In 2007, a group of paranormal researchers captured what appeared to be a conversation between two unseen entities. One voice, deep and guttural, spoke in an unfamiliar language, while the other responded in broken English, pleading, "Let me go. I don't want to stay." The recording, released online, sparked widespread speculation. Some believed it to be the desperate cries of a trapped spirit, while others feared it was evidence of something far worse, an intelligence lurking beneath the surface, feeding off the fear of intruders. Perhaps the most chilling instance of phantom voices occurred in 2018, when a solo explorer named Clara Voss recorded herself navigating the deepest sections of the Metro. Her video feed, streamed live to a small audience, showed her cautiously making her way through a pitch-black tunnel, guided only by the beam of her flashlight. Suddenly, The audio feed crackled, and a child's voice, soft, innocent, and unmistakably real, whispered, "Don't look behind you." Clara froze, her breathing hitching in her throat. She hesitated, then slowly turned around. Nothing was there. The tunnel stretched into darkness, the only illumination coming from her trembling flashlight. The voice returned moments later, clearer this time. "We're still here." Panicked, Clara fled the tunnel, abandoning her equipment in her haste to escape. When the video resurfaced online, viewers scrutinized the audio, attempting to determine its origin. None could explain it. Theories abound regarding the nature of these voices. Some claim they are residual hauntings, recordings of past events imprinted onto the environment, replaying endlessly like a ghostly echo. Others argue that they are active spirits, aware of the living and attempting to communicate. More disturbing still is the possibility that the voices are not of human origin at all, but rather something far older, something that has always lurked beneath the city, waiting for those foolish enough to listen. Whatever the truth, one thing remains certain: the Metro of Death is not silent. It speaks in whispers, in warnings, in voices that should not exist. And for those who dare to enter, the question is not whether they will hear the voices, but whether they will survive what follows. Shadows on the platform, ghostly figures and unseen watchers beyond the eerie voices that haunt the Metro of Death. Perhaps the most frequently reported phenomenon is the appearance of ghostly figures roaming the platforms and tunnels. These apparitions, varying in form and intensity, have been described by numerous witnesses over the years, some fleeting glimpses of pale silhouettes, others full-bodied specters standing motionless amidst the ruins of the abandoned stations. Whether they are mere echoes of the past or something far more sinister remains unknown, but their presence is undeniable. One of the earliest documented sightings dates back to 1971, when a group of teenagers sneaked into the derelict Central Station under the cover of darkness. Armed with flashlights and youthful bravado, they explored the dusty corridors, their laughter bouncing off the cracked tile walls. As they reached the platform, one of them, Liam Carter, claimed to see a woman in a tattered 1940s-era coat standing at the far end of the track. She was facing away from them, unmoving, her posture rigid as if frozen in time. When Liam called out to her, asking if she needed help, the woman did not respond. Instead, she turned her head ever so slightly, just enough for him to catch a glimpse of her face. He described her eyes as hollow, dark voids that seemed to swallow the light. Before he could react, she vanished into thin air, leaving only silence in her wake. More recent encounters paint a similar picture. In 2010, a pair of urban explorers captured footage of what appeared to be a man in an old-fashioned suit standing on the platform of Ashbridge Station. The figure was clearly visible, outlined against the dim glow of their camera's night vision setting. He stood perfectly still, arms crossed, as if waiting for a train that would never arrive. When the explorers approached, hoping to get a closer look, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind only a faint, static-like distortion in the air. The footage, reviewed by multiple experts, showed no signs of digital manipulation, adding further credence to the theory that something, whether human or otherwise, still inhabits the metro. Not all apparitions appear as individual figures. Some take on more ominous forms. In 2016, a documentary crew filming an episode on abandoned locations reported seeing what they described as a procession, of spectral passengers lining the platform of West End Station. According to their testimonies, the figures were dressed in clothing from different eras, some in early 20th century attire, others in garments from the 1940s and 1950s. None of them moved, nor did they acknowledge the crew's presence. They simply stood there, staring straight ahead, as if awaiting a train that had long since ceased running. When the filmmakers attempted to approach, the figures faded one by one, dissolving into mist until nothing remained. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these sightings is the sensation of being watched. Many who have explored the metro describe an overwhelming feeling that they are not alone, even when no physical presence can be detected. This was especially true for a solo explorer named Marcus Delaney, who in 2020 documented his descent into the deepest reaches of the Black Hollow Tunnel. As he filmed his journey, he repeatedly mentioned a growing discomfort, describing an invisible force that seemed to follow him step by step. At one point, he paused, shining his flashlight across the tunnel walls, only to catch the faint outline of a humanoid shape standing just beyond the beam of light. It did not move, nor did it retreat. It simply watched. When Marcus backed away, the figure remained in place, vanishing only when he turned a corner and lost sight of it. Some speculate that these figures are the lingering remnants of those who perished in the metro's tragic history. Passengers who never reached their destinations, workers who met untimely ends, and victims of the mysterious disasters that led to its closure. Others believe that the metro has become a gateway of sorts, a place where the veil between worlds is thin, allowing entities from beyond to manifest in our reality. Whatever the truth, one fact remains clear: the metro of death is not empty. Something waits within its shadows, watching, waiting, remembering. Of all the horrors associated with the metro of death, none are as chilling as the accounts of those who entered its depths and were never seen again. While many explorers manage to escape with only their sanity intact, others vanish without a trace, leaving behind no clues, no bodies, and no definitive answers. These disappearances, scattered across decades, fuel the belief that the metro is more than just a haunted ruin. It is a place where reality unravels, where time ceases to function as it should, and where the lost may never truly be gone. One of the most infamous cases involves Daniel Reyes, whose 2003 expedition was captured on a helmet-mounted camcorder. His footage, widely circulated online, shows him descending into the depths of the abandoned system with remarkable clarity. He documents his journey meticulously, narrating his observations and reactions as he explores the decaying tunnels. Everything appears normal until he reaches a section of the metro marked only by a rusted sign reading, "Ashridge Line closed." Here, the atmosphere shifts. The lighting grows dimmer, the air heavier, and the usual ambient sounds of dripping water and distant echoes fade into an oppressive silence. Daniel claims to hear faint whispers, though no one else is present. He turns toward the camera, his expression tense, and utters a single phrase: "Something's wrong." Moments later, the footage cuts to static. When the video resumes, the camera is lying on the ground, its lens pointing toward the tunnel wall. A distorted voice, possibly Daniel's, can be heard, barely audible over the noise. "I can't go back. I'm stuck." Then silence. The camera never moves again. Despite extensive searches, Daniel was never found. His family received no ransom demands, no sightings, no forensic evidence, only unanswered questions. Another case that continues to baffle investigators is that of the 2011 university expedition. A group of 7 students from the city's historical preservation program sought to document the architectural features of the abandoned stations for a research project. Equipped with mapping tools, GPS trackers, and voice recorders, they planned to spend no more than 3 hours exploring the upper levels of the metro. However, only 4 of them returned. The 3 who vanished, Emily Foster, Jordan Lynn, and Marcus Bell, are the subject of one of the most perplexing disappearances linked to the Metro of Death. The remaining students insist that nothing unusual occurred until they reached the lower level of West End Station, where they claim to have seen a train parked on the tracks. Unlike the rusted, decaying carriages typically found in the abandoned system, this train appeared pristine, its windows gleaming, its exterior free of dust or corrosion. According to the survivors, Emily, Jordan, and Marcus became fascinated by the train and insisted on boarding it. The others urged them to reconsider, but the trio ignored their warnings and stepped inside. What happened next remains unclear. The remaining students claim that the train doors closed almost instantly, sealing their friends inside. They pounded on the windows, shouting for them to let them out, but the trio inside appeared oblivious. The train then pulled away, moving silently down the tracks. No engine noise, no screeching brakes, just a smooth, effortless departure into the darkness. The survivors attempted to follow, but the tunnel beyond was blocked by an inexplicable wall of rubble that hadn't been there moments before. Rescue teams were deployed, but no trace of the missing students was ever found. The tunnel where the train had disappeared was thoroughly searched, yet there was no sign of damage, no derailment, and no wreckage. The GPS trackers worn by the students also yielded no useful data. All signals ceased the moment they entered the train. Some theorized that they were victims of a hallucination or mass hysteria, but the consistency of the survivors' testimonies makes such explanations difficult to accept. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of these disappearances is the recurring theme of entrapment. Those who vanish often describe a sensation of being pulled into something that refuses to let them go. In the case of Clara Voss, a solo explorer who streamed a portion of her 2018 expedition online, she described a moment where the air around her seemed to thicken, making it difficult to breathe. She claimed that the walls of the tunnel were narrowing, though no physical changes could be observed on the video feed. As she struggled to move forward, she muttered, "I think it knows I'm here." Then, with a final, panicked gasp, her stream cut out. Her camera was later recovered, still attached to her helmet, but there was no sign of her body. These cases, and countless others, contribute to the prevailing belief that the Metro of Death is not merely a haunted location, but a place where the laws of physics and time are bent beyond comprehension. Whether the missing individuals are trapped in another dimension, lost in an alternate version of the Metro, or simply consumed by something unseen, no one can say for certain. All that remains are their stories, whispers in the darkness, warnings from those who never made it back. For those who dare to explore the Metro of Death, the experience rarely leaves them unchanged. Even those who manage to escape with their lives often carry lasting psychological scars, their minds tormented by the horrors they witnessed. The effects vary from person to person. Some suffer from acute paranoia, others develop crippling anxiety, and a few descend into madness, unable to distinguish reality from the nightmare they endured beneath the city. One of the most common symptoms reported by survivors is an overwhelming sense of dread that persists long after they leave the tunnels. Many describe an inability to shake the feeling that they are still being watched, even in broad daylight. Some claim to hear faint whispers in the dead of night, voices that mimic the ones they heard in the metro, repeating phrases that make no sense. Others report sleep disturbances, nightmares so vivid and realistic that they wake up gasping for air, convinced that they are still trapped in the darkness. Paranoia is another frequent consequence. Survivors often find themselves obsessively checking door locks, glancing over their shoulders, and avoiding enclosed spaces. Some refuse to ride subways or elevators, terrified of reliving the suffocating sensation of being underground. In extreme cases, individuals have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, their daily lives disrupted by panic attacks triggered by the slightest reminder of their experience. There are also those who fall victim to delusions, convinced that something followed them back to the surface. A former explorer named Marcus Delaney, who managed to escape the metro in 2020, later claimed that a shadowy figure had been trailing him ever since. He insisted that it stood at the foot of his bed every night, its presence palpable even in the brightest light. Eventually, he stopped sleeping altogether, fearing that he would wake up somewhere else, somewhere dark. His condition deteriorated rapidly, culminating in a breakdown that landed him in a psychiatric facility, where he reportedly spent his final days whispering to unseen entities in the corners of his room. For some, the trauma is too great to bear. There have been documented cases of individuals taking their own lives shortly after emerging from the metro, unable to cope with what they had seen. Others simply vanish, their families receiving cryptic messages hinting at things they cannot explain. The consensus among those who study these cases is that the metro of death does not merely frighten its victims, it consumes them, leaving behind only fragments of their former selves. Ultimately, the psychological toll of the metro serves as a grim reminder. Survival does not guarantee freedom. For those who enter, the horrors never truly end. The metro of death stands as more than just a relic of a forgotten era. It is a testament to the horrors that lie beneath the surface of the mundane. Its tunnels, once meant to serve as pathways of progress, have instead become corridors of despair, where the echoes of the past refuse to fade. Every story, every whisper, every chilling encounter adds another layer to the enigma that surrounds this forsaken place. And yet, despite the warnings etched into the fabric of its history, there are always those who seek to uncover its secrets, to peer into the abyss and see what awaits them in the darkness. But what lies beyond the rusted gates and crumbling stairwells? Is it merely the remnants of a tragedy long past, or something far worse, an entity that thrives on fear, feeding off those who dare to trespass? The evidence suggests that the metro of death is not simply haunted, but cursed, a place where time and reality twist upon themselves, trapping the unwary in an endless cycle of terror. Those who enter may believe they are merely exploring an abandoned subway, but they soon realize that they are stepping into something far greater than themselves. Perhaps the greatest horror of all is that the metro of death does not forget. It remembers every soul that has passed through its tunnels, every whispered prayer, every desperate cry for escape. It watches. It waits. And for those who choose to ignore the warnings, there is no turning back.